YouTube, what's up? Back again for another daily fishing video here on Andrew Upshaw Fishing. Heading to Tulsa to get another load to take back down to Salida Bend. And I was looking at a couple pictures that I had on the wall and saw a couple of the really big fish I've caught on Salida through the years. And I started thinking about how to target giant bass. Not 5, 6, 7 pounders, more like 10, 11, 12 pounders. And I truly think that there's a certain way that you have to target those really, really big ones about 10 months out of the year. And we are in that 10 months right now. So, hey, real quick though, if you haven't yet, drop down that right-hand corner, hit that sub button real fast, and tell a friend to come subscribe to this channel. I know that somebody else can learn from this channel. And comment below, what is your personal best, largemouth, smallmouth, or spotted bass? I know all of you kind of fish for something different. Love to hear what it is. So, hey guys, y'all stay tuned, and I hope you learn a little bit about targeting giant bass. In today's video, we're going to talk about targeting giant bass. And I'm talking about the 9, 10, 11, 12, and bigger than normal bass. And I truly think, after all the years that I've been fishing, there is a way that you can target these fish. So 10 months out of the year, those fish live offshore. They live in brush piles, on ledges, standing timber, around, just kind of out there in the middle of nowhere in some cases. I've seen them swimming out in 30, 40 foot of water. But targeting those fish and actually trying to catch them can be a really, really hard task. I can count of only a handful, and I say a handful, like 2, 3, or 4 fish that I've caught in less than 10 foot of water that weighed over 9 to 10 pounds. Most of the 9 to 10 pounders that I've caught anywhere between 12 and 18 foot. So that 2 months out of the year, you kind of take that into account where you can actually catch them spawning or on beds. But most of the time, if you're trying to target a 9 or 10 pounder, you're going to catch that fish offshore. So I found it really interesting. I started thinking back on all the really, really big fish that I've caught over the years. And I would say that 95% of them were less than 18 foot of water. I don't think I've ever caught a 10 pounder deeper than 18. Now, I think I hooked one time that was in like 25. But it could have been like an 8 pounder, but I thought it was like a 9 or a 10. But 9 times out of 10, the fish that you're going to catch, the really, really big ones, are going to be less than 18. I think those really big ones require a certain amount of oxygen. Even when they're in 30, 40, 50 foot, they're going to be suspended about the same distance down. On a lake like Salida Bend, we have all that big standing timber. I mean, when I say big, like huge, big trees, I think some of those really giant bass, the really big ones, will actually go suspend out there around those river channel bends and things like that on that standing timber and stay down only like 12, 15, 20 foot around in that range, but never get much deeper because it all has to do with oxygen. You know, and I think those really big ones, they require the perfect amount of oxygen. The only time of the year that those really big ones won't even go shallow is when they spawn. So when I'm targeting those giant bass, you know, people think that, man, if you're going to target those really big ones, you got to throw really big baits. And that's really not true. You know, I truly think that there's only a handful of baits that I've ever really caught a 10 pounder on. And it's a very short list of baits. So one bait that I've caught, you know, a number of 10 plus pounders on is a Carolina rig. And plastic doesn't really matter when it comes to it. I think it's more about putting it in front of them than anything. I've caught them on game hogs, you know, like a baby brush hog style bait. I've caught them on straight tail worms. I've caught them on ribbon tail worms. It's just kind of one of those things where you just have to be throwing it. It's something about that natural presentation of a Carolina rig that really triggers that really big bite. Another bait that I caught my 12 pounder on was a jig, and in that case it was a football jig, but some of the biggest fish I've ever hooked in my entire life have come on a jig. I actually hooked one on Salida Bend flipping grass one time, and it literally rolled off the hook at the net. That was, I mean, I've never seen a 13 pounder in person, but it was every bit of 13, 14 pounds. It was the most massive fish I've ever seen in my entire life. And that was in about 12 foot of water around some hydrilla. But I think a jig really, speaks volumes to those big fish. They really like to eat that big meal. It's like a one hit for them. But the one bait that I've caught more 9+ pound bass on, 10 pounders, 11 pounders on, is a deep diving crankbait. To me, there's not a better big fish bait than a deep diving crankbait. And, deep diving crankbaits come in all styles, lip sizes, body designs, and colors. I mean, you got baits like the 10XD that is just a massive plug, and you've got some that are smaller, like a 6XD, 5XD, some of those that still dive deep, but the body size isn't big. And I would say that it's kind of split for me. Some of my really, really big ones have come on the bigger baits, like the 10XD. But I would say a lot of my really big ones have come on a 5XD, like a little bit smaller than a 6, fishing the more of that mid-depth range at 7 to 12, 15 foot, not going super duper deep. And the other thing that I've noticed with those really big ones that I honestly don't know why, but they seem to be more like lone wolves. So when I find a 9 or 10 pounder, they're typically alone. I don't catch them around a school of fish. I typically don't even catch another fish in that area for like 300 yards. Typically, if I catch a really, really big one, they're all by themselves. So it's hard to pattern those because you go to your favorite spot. Let's just say you have a ledge that you always catch a lot of fish on. That's probably not where you're going to catch your biggest fish. I mean, you might luck up one day and just happen to throw in a 10-pounder's mouth, but 9 times out of 10 for me, when it comes to targeting those really, really big ones, they're all by themselves. And it's the strangest thing, and it's places that you'd never expect to catch a bass, especially one of that size. I've caught some around bridges. I've caught some around underwater road beds, just places where you would think there might be bass, but you just don't catch a bunch of them. It's the craziest thing. I remember fishing a tournament with Ben Matsubu on Lake Amistad, and we caught a 10-pounder. I want to say we got big bass in that tournament, and we caught it on a spot, like I'm talking about, that typically has a lot of fish on it. It was one of those places we caught them on in the past. We pulled up to that spot that day, and in the first 5 minutes, we caught the 10-pounder on a football jig, and we literally never had another bite there. The rest of the time, we fished there for another hour, never had another bite. I can tell you that so many different times, so many different stories of when I've caught a really, really big fish and never had another bite on that spot. I had a BFL that I won on Toledo, and I caught 31 pounds in that tournament, and I never caught a fish over 7 pounds. And I think if I'd have just sat there and just kept catching them, I'd have just caught 5, 6, 7 pounders. I mean, I would have never caught a really giant fish. And it's funny, so like the day after that BFL, not many people know this, but the day after that BFL, I went out there in a writers conference, and I took an outdoor rider to that spot, and I caught a 7-pounder right off the bat, like first cast. And then I took him to a spot that I was like, we might not get a bite here, but if we get one bite here, it's going to be the biggest fish of the week, no questions asked. We pull up, I line up, I throw my deep diving crankbait out there, and I hook up on my first cast, and it's like a 9+, and it pulls off at the boat. But I went back to that spot 3 days in a row, made that same cast where those big ones line up, and I never had another bite. Never even had another bite after I lost that 9-pounder. But that just goes to show, when you find a spot that has really, really big ones, yeah, a lot of times you can pull back up and catch a fish there, but they're going to be by themselves. So when and if you decide that you want to go target really, really big fish, just go and put it out of your mind that you're going to go out there and catch 50 fish a day, because that's just not how it's going to be. If you're trying to catch that really big one, you're probably not going to catch a bunch of them. So, guys, I hope y'all learn from this video. I hope y'all understand that when you're targeting big fish, it's not necessarily a bait change or something like that, but it's more so knowing that you kind of got to fish away from all the other fish. If you haven't yet, hit that sub button, share this video with a friend, and comment below what is your personal best bass. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on the next one.